Hello everyone, I am Ansie Fouché. I'm a professor of social work at the Northwest University, the Nonverbal campus in South Africa. I'm also a registered social worker with the South African Council for Social Services Professions. Before I entered academia, I mainly conducted forensic investigations into allegations of child sexual abuse. During my years as a social worker investigating allegations of child sexual abuse, writing court reports and ultimately testifying in court, I've learned the importance of following a systematic approach when you identify and evaluate signs and symptoms of child maltreatment. During the course of the next 8 months, we at the CAVE are going to share with you some tips how to identify signs and symptoms of the various types of child maltreatment. For today, I'm going to share with you a structured process in which you can evaluate signs and symptoms of child maltreatment. I'm going to give an overview today, and in the next videos to come in 2020, we will then use this structured way to apply it to the evaluation of child maltreatment, focusing on each type in every video. So please come back to the CAVE next year and see what we have to help you and empower you to be able to do your work better. So today, like I said, I'm going to focus on child maltreatment overall and give you a, I don't want to say model, a structured process procedure and in how you can evaluate the signs and symptoms. But first of all, it's important that we get a common understanding of what is child maltreatment. Now, the World Health Organization definition states that child maltreatment is abuse and neglect that occurs to children under 18 years of age. It includes all types of physical and or emotional ill treatment, sexual abuse, neglect, negligence, and commercial or other exploitation which result in actual or potential harm to the child's health, survival, development, or dignity in the context of a relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. And what's also important to take note of is that child maltreatment is also seen when a child is exposed to intimate partner violence, and like I said, that's also included as a form of maltreatment. What's the main responsibility of child protection social workers? I've summarized it in the acronym PPRR, and it stands for, the first P stands for prevent. So one of the main responsibilities for child protection social worker is to prevent child maltreatment, and we will be talking about that in a video in future. To protect children who are exposed to child maltreatment, responding to reports thereof and investigation, report to police and courts, and then finally to rebuild the lives by focusing on ensuring the social, physical, psychological and emotional well-being of a child and a family. We're going to focus today on just one of those responsibilities, and it's to protect. And the question one can ask is, how do I evaluate potential signs and symptoms of child maltreatment? And remember, I said this is just an overview. This is a procedure that I found is very helpful. And in future, we are going to contextualize this within each type of abuse. So I call it the A to H. And the first A stands for appearance. So when a child protection social worker wants to evaluate an intake that she gets, she wants to evaluate allegation of child maltreatment, the A stands for appearance. So, and this is physical signs such as frequent unexplained injuries, constantly poor hygiene, unexplained gifts, or a parent regularly collecting children from school when drunk, etc. So the first thing is look at appearance. What is visible from the outside? Then B, behavior, and that includes verbal and non-verbal behavior. And with verbal behavior, I refer now to when children would use sexual language when they talk. For example, a child that suddenly has knowledge outside of what would expect it, or beyond what is expected of a child in that age group, that would then be a verbal behavior that one would want to investigate further. And then in terms of non-verbal behavior, and obviously that's that type of behavior that doesn't make sense, it's inappropriate, and it also, what's important is it's always about a drastic change in behavior, a drastic unexplained behavior, and there's a sudden change. So that's important, and we will have a look at it, at how does it look in its different categories. The C stands for context, and the context is very important. The appearance, meaning what I see physically, and the behavior, non-verbal and verbal, needs to be evaluated within the context of the family, culture, the community, the developmental level of the child's exposure, etc. And what I mean by that is that as a child protection social worker, one cannot make a judgment in isolation by merely just looking at the A or the B. It always has to be seen within the context. And then the D stands for dialogue. Often, significant key role players are the parents. The child will always be a significant role player that needs to be consulted, that there needs to be dialogue, communication with the child, parents, caregivers, families, teachers, etc. So the reason for the D, the dialogue, is that what was picked up in terms of appearance and in behavior needs to be explored with significant others in order to understand it in the context. And I don't think child protection social workers will not understand it. One will always approach parents and seek the E, the explanation for the A, the appearance and the behavior. And the explanations will always be contextualized with the significant role players. So the significant role players will always be asked about the signs and the symptoms that were picked up in the appearance and in behavior, and they need to clarify it within the context. And then the F stands for frequency. It's very important to explore the frequency of what happened, the physical signs, the verbal and the non-verbal behavior. Because parents might say that there was that a child fell and that's where the bruises come from. But if there's been reports of multiple physical signs, then the frequency will indicate that it might not be an accident, because what are the chances a child would fall so often. The G stands for generate and test hypothesis. So the social worker needs to look at the appearance, the behavior within the context. She needs dialogue with significant role players, etc. She needs to contextualize the explanations of the significant role player within the context. She needs to take frequency in consideration, and when she's done all of that, she needs to generate and then test the hypothesis to be able to conclude that what is the most probable explanation for what happened. And then the H stands for get help, report, respond. There is research that indicates that 1 out of 3 people will actually do something when they have knowledge about child maltreatment. My message then is, when you're not sure whether it is child maltreatment, the definition of the child maltreatment doesn't say whatever happened to the child will result, or it's child maltreatment when it definitely results in actually harm. It says it results in potential harm. So it means child protection social worker must evaluate everything in context and then respond, although she might not be 100% sure. And I want you to remember this phrase: when in doubt, get help. Discuss it with a supervisor, report to the police, ask a colleague about it, read up on what you've picked up, so that we do not let children down, because you might be the only person that can help a child.
Thank you, Ansie. Is there anything else that you would like to add to what you've already said? Maybe you can just repeat the acronym again.
Yes, the structured procedure to take into consideration when a child protection social worker needs to evaluate potential signs is A to H, and the A stands for appearance, B for behavior, verbal and non-verbal, C for context, D for dialogue with significant role plays including the child, E is explore explanations, whether they make sense or not, and to contextualize it, and F is explore frequencies, and G is generate and test hypotheses. And remember, you don't need to prove the hypothesis. And H is for get help, report, respond. When in doubt, get help.